you may say, would anybody ever fold a jack on the turn in this spot, given there's a lot of draws available? I think Negreanu would. I mean, Negreanu made it crystal clear what his strategy was against Phil Hellmuth. He is going to play lots of pots, and whenever Hellmuth wants to put in a lot of money, he's going to get out of the way unless he has a very good hand. Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little for PokerCoaching.com, here today with another hand from High Stakes Duel, featuring two absolute titans of poker, Phil Hellmuth and Daniel Negreanu. This was a long 6-hour battle. Phil Hellmuth came out victorious despite getting down to 1/10 of his starting stack. He clawed his way back, and now he is officially the greatest poker player in the world. Congrats to Phil Hellmuth for that amazing accomplishment. Today we have a hand that I don't really like the way Phil Hellmuth played. That said, I'm not Phil Hellmuth, the exploitative master, so I could be wrong about this one. But let's take a look. Phil Hellmuth raises it up to 3,200 with the King-Jack offsuit, playing about 40 big blinds deep. Perfectly fine, perfectly standard, nothing to see here. Negreanu calls. Flop comes King-Jack 6. Hellmuth has the super nuts. Yes, he's worried about flush draws and straight draws, but to be fair, whenever you're playing heads up, you're not so worried about that. You just want to get your money in. Negreanu checks. Hellmuth goes for a big continuation bet. Kind of interesting. I would probably just go for a smaller bet size in general in this spot, because when you bet this big, you're going to start making some of the weaker hands in Negreanu's range fold immediately, like ace high. Small pairs, like pocket twos, maybe even a 6 would fold. And I don't think you necessarily want those hands to fold. I think you'd be much happier betting smaller. Also, notice that we started pretty shallow stack to begin with. If you bet something like 3K on the flop and Negreanu calls, pot's going to go to 12 with 40 left. You can then bet something like 9 on the turn. That'd make the pot 29 or so with about 30-ish left. And then you could shove river for roughly pot. And I think that would reasonably get stacks in while still keeping Negreanu in with a really wide range on the flop. And, very importantly, perhaps giving him the illusion of fold equity. Because if you bet big on this flop, you're really just not going to get raised all that often, because at least from a GTO point of view, you should be betting big with a very polarized range of good made hands and draws. And Negreanu just doesn't want to be raising into a range that contains a lot of good made hands, especially given it's pretty clear that Hellmuth's big betting range is mostly good made hands. He does sporadically get out of line and run bluffs, which is good. I think he should be doing more of it. But when he does use big bets, it's typically pretty good hands. So anyway, Negreanu calls. All right, Negreanu has something. Turn is the 2 of spades, and Negreanu checks. All right, now, Hellmuth has to decide what he should do in this scenario. So I want you to tell me what you would do in the comment section below with the top 2 pair, knowing that Negreanu typically does not pay off too wide whenever you start really piling your money in, and also knowing that he thinks that when you bet multiple times, you probably have something pretty decent. What should we do in this spot? Should we check? Should we bet small, like 4,000? Should we bet medium, like 9,000? Or should we bet big, like 17,000? I want you to pause the video and write in the comment section below what you would do. Going through this active learning process will go a long way to helping you improve your skills. So go ahead, do it. I'll wait for you. All right. Hope you went through this active learning process. If you did, congratulations. If you didn't, I can't help you get good if you're not going to work with me here. If you want to continue improving your poker skills, make sure you check out PokerCoaching.com. I'm actually having a sale right now, so make sure you check that out at PokerCoaching.com/spring, because it's springtime. Also, we have a 100% money-back guarantee for PokerCoaching.com. If you don't like it, just tell me. Send me an email, and I'll give you a complete 100% refund, no questions asked. If I do not help you improve your poker skills, I do not want or deserve your money. I'm not one of those sites out there that's going to charge you a ton of money up front for 4 hours of content and then not give you a refund when it doesn't help you. Okay? That's not what we do here. We are in the business of helping you succeed at poker. So head over to PokerCoaching.com/spring. All right. This is a spot where Hellmuth has a very easy bet. He really, really, really wants to get money in the pot. If you let it go check on the turn, and Negreanu bets the river, which he'll do with some busted draws and some good hands like a king. If you then raise, he's just going to start folding out a ton, because whenever you raise river in Hellmuth shoes, if he thinks you're not running a lot of bluffs, he's just not going to pay you off, right? So letting it go check doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So the question then becomes, how much should we bet? If we bet 4,000, a small bet, and Negreanu calls, pot's going to go up to, what, 23,000? Is that right? Can I do math right? Something like that. Pot's going to go up to 23,000. 25,000? You see what happens when I do math on the fly? I'm bad at math on the fly. Let's say pots can go to 25, and we're going to have 33 left. That's going to force us to go for an overshove on the river, right? Which is not really ideal. You don't really want to be making giant bets against opponents who probably think your giant bets are a little bit value heavy. So while we will get called on the turn a lot, we're going to get folds on the river a lot, which is not what we're going for. Also, whenever we bet small on the turn, we're giving Negreanu really good odds with whatever draws he has. And he will have some draws here, right? He could easily have a flush draw or queen 10 or something like that that has pretty good equity. And we don't want to give those hands very good odds. So a small bet doesn't really make a lot of sense. What about a medium bet, like 9,000? If we bet 9,000, think I can figure out what the pot's going to go to? No shot. What's it? 35, something like that. So if we bet 9, pot's going to go to 35, and Negreanu's going to have 28 left. That gives us a 2/3 pot size river bet. 3/4 pot size river bet, somewhere in there. Anyway, that is a nice river bet size. So we're going to price out the draws to some extent on the turn with a 9K bet, and we're setting up a reasonable river shove. That sounds like a pretty good bet to me. I love the 9,000 bet in this spot. Okay, fine. What about a big bet? Does a big bet make sense? And I think the answer is no, because kind of like if we bet small on the flop and then big on the river, we have a ton. We're going to make our opponent fold way too much on the river with a big river bet. If we bet big on the turn, I think we're going to make Negreanu fold a lot of hands on the turn. He may fold hands as good as a jack on the turn. And you may say, would anybody ever fold a jack on the turn in this spot, given there's a lot of draws available? I think Negreanu would. I mean, Negreanu made it crystal clear what his strategy was against Phil Hellmuth. He is going to play lots of pots, and whenever Hellmuth wants to put in a lot of money, he's going to get out of the way unless he has a very good hand. And to be fair, I think that's actually a pretty good strategy, and it allowed Negreanu to pretty consistently grind Hellmuth down during the deep stacked portion of this heads-up match. And I think it's a pretty good play. If you know your opponent primarily likes to use big bets with just good hands, don't pay him off. Have the discipline to fold. Now, obviously, Hellmuth does get out of line. He does bluff every once in a while. But I think for the most part, Negreanu was spot on with that assessment. Hellmuth crushes the overly loose, aggressive players because they just pay Hellmuth off every single time he has a good hand. Maybe not every time, but the vast majority of the time. And Hellmuth just doesn't get out of line all that often. You don't need to get out of line if your opponents are going to pay off like a slot machine. All right. This is a spot where does pay off like a slot machine means pay off a lot or a little? Some pay off a lot. You have to make sure you find the right one. If your opponents are going to pay off every single time, if they're always going to call, then you just want to not bluff, right? All right, anyway, Negreanu checks. Hellmuth goes for, a big bet. Big, chunky bet. Negreanu's going to fold almost everything here, and he does fold. So, was this the right play? Look, Phil Hellmuth's absolutely crushing people in these heads-up games, at least in terms of results. And I'm not going to say this is necessarily bad. I get why he would want to make a big bet here. He wants to get money in against a king or perhaps a jack before the board gets scary because the river is going to be bad a lot of the time. And he wants to price out the draws, right? And betting big like this really does price out the draws. Negreanu should start folding out hands like some flush draws in this scenario facing a big bet. But he's also going to get hands like a jack to fold a ton. And, well, let me show you what happened here. Negreanu folded out king 4 for top pair. This is a hand that is like criminal to fold in any normal scenario against a normal opponent. But Negreanu correctly assessed that in this scenario, Hellmuth's range is going to be very, 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 very weighted towards value hands. So what is a value hand on king jack 6-2? You really think he's blasting it with like ace jack? No, he's just going to let it go check. Or he's going to bet small. One thing Hellmuth made kind of clear with a lot of his play and comments is that he typically bets his really good hands big and his strong but non-nut hand small, which to be fair isn't necessarily a bad strategy as long as you mix it up a little bit. But if he is making this big bet with only hands that he thinks are very, very good, or some bluffs, how does king 4 do against that range? Well, it actually doesn't do all that well because you lose to every king, right? And every set and 2 pair and whatnot. Yeah, when you have king 4, you block 2 pair because it makes it more difficult for Hellmuth to have 2 pair. But if your opponent's really mostly betting with those hands, it just doesn't matter. They probably just have one of those hands. And this is a spot where Negreanu correctly folded and sidestepped a spot where I think a lot of people would have just check-called turn and check-called it off on safe rivers, hoping to catch the various bluffs in Hellmuth's range. But Negreanu realized that a lot of the bluffs that would normally be in a more GTO-type player's range just don't exist in Hellmuth's range, and that allowed Negreanu to get off the hook. So that's going to be it for today. Hope you enjoyed this hand from High Stakes Duel. This is a very, very fun show. Make sure you check it out on Poker Go. It's a long match, a grindy match. Lots and lots of swings, but it was fun to watch. Infinite needles were being jabbed at each other. So if you like needles, if you like seeing Hellmuth chow down on a chicken sandwich, check out High Stakes Duel on Poker Go. That's going to be it for today. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Click the like, subscribe buttons below and the notification bell. Good luck in your games. Have a great, great day. And I'll talk to you next time.